Hello, this is Jeremy Webster with Collector's Maze, and I am here with Hoyt Silva, um, comics illustrator, general illustrator, artist at large. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I understand that you got a bit of a big Kickstarter project you've got going on right now.
Yeah, we do. Doug Wagner and I did a book called Yumi, Spy, Fatale, Baddie Royale, and it's live on Kickstarter right now until March the 11th. It's about a young girl who ends up meeting a spy, and the spy gets kidnapped, and she has to fight all his super spy exes in order to try to get him back. It goes quite a bit deeper than that, but that's sort of the surface level stuff that we deal with.
Super spy. So
Yeah, yeah.
I bet that gives you a lot of opportunity to draw like funky, interesting tech.
Oh yeah, dude. That was one of the funnest parts, actually. Like, and the thing is since we did it ourselves, Doug and I had nobody really like telling us like you can't do this and you can't do that. Like everyone we had involved, our editor, colorist, 12 gauge, everybody was sort of behind us in doing it. So basically, it was just like a back and forth of like, oh, I'd like to see this thing. Hey, can we put this thing in? Oh, I'd like a supercar. Okay, can it be a Lamborghini? Oh, if it's going to be a Lamborghini, it's got to be electric blue, like make
Yeah.
it change colors, make it talk, give it AI, like it was just like that kind of build and build and build and build. And we got to play around with and do some interesting things too. Because like we're spinning off of like the whole Ian Fleming, James Bond thing,
Mhm.
we wanted to have a lot of that tech stuff in there as well. Cause she's basically the world's greatest hacker. And so like we came up with things like of what we would think would be cool modern spy tech. And one of the things that she has is she has this like infinity dress. I don't know if you're familiar with that is, but it's like those long tube cloths that women can like sort of
Oh,
change into a bunch of different outfits and stuff.
yeah, because my wife has a couple of the infinity scarves.
There
Yeah,
you go.
yeah.
Yeah. It's the same. It's the same setup, except for they're like a little bit like wider to be a whole like dress setup or whatever. And so we gave her one of those, and it's like bulletproof, and it hides all her gadgets and like all kinds of stuff like that. So she can also like just change into different outfits, like rocking that thing. So, yeah, definitely playing with the spy gadgets was a huge fun part about getting to do the genre.
It seems like something that would really lend itself to a comic sensibility. The kind of an interesting thing, the spy genre in general seems like a genre in film, television, and such that either goes way ahead or is really stodgy lost in Cold War. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's like you watch the iterations of James Bond, and even though they update him to go Daniel Craig or whatever, certain like elements that would be criticized today in like the older ones, for example, they literally go through a woman every movie, if not two.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And
A
their
lot
names
of
are absolutely sexist. Let's be real. Like the names are like really intense. So
oh
that's
yeah.
one of the things we played with in ours as well. Because since we put the shoe on the other foot, like it's a spy story that's not about a secret agent. It's about a woman sort of hunting down a secret agent.
Mhm.
And so we tried to just like flip everything that we could on its head. And speaking of that like female naming convention, we decided to flip that for the guys. So our main spy that she's after, his name is Richard Head, so we decided to like go ahead and like flip that, because we thought like, hey, if they can do it that way, then we can do it this way, like just to have fun with it. So
And it sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, you got franchises out there like Mission Impossible, for example, where they push it forward with the tech and stuff like this, but they're so very serious. They don't have quite the sense of fun like a Moonraker. You know what I mean?
yes, and that was the vibe we wanted. Like that's where we're like, and I say poking fun with like the absolute most love that I can have for it, because I'm a huge spy genre Ian Fleming Bond fan. I grew up like watching Pierce Brosnan shoot lasers out of a watch and like drive like Z3s with rocket launchers on it and stuff. So
Yeah.
um
Wasn't
you
there
know
one
my,
where the car went invisible? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So like all of that stuff, like I think is just so cool, and we wanted to play off of that and like give it that modern spin, like you're talking about, where if it's gonna be today, like would it be a Lamborghini? Would it be a BMW that he would get? Like, because when we looked at it, Fleming like things in there that were for his era and time, modern, that made Bond debonair, made him dashing, made him like the at the edge of like style, you know?
Right.
And so we were like, well, what's that today? You know, like how can we come up with items and things that make Yumi stunting like Bond was back in the 70s kind of thing, you know, like what's that parallel? So that's why we went with like, you know, a Lamborghini Aventador and like like all kinds of stuff like that. So
Because no matter what they are, they're never really subtle, are they?
no,
For
no,
people
no,
who are
no.
supposed to hide out and pop out at, they're
Yeah.
always in an Aston Martin. Or
Right, exactly. And you know, and that's the other thing that we played up to is we wanted to take that like to the end with Yumi. So she's what we've basically dubbed now an anti-spy, where she is the opposite of Bond. So a character like a high class spy assassin, you would expect him to go into a situation, have some like suave, some finesse, try to like sneak in there, get his way, and then if he can't get his way, he might have to like twist a few arms to like get in there or whatever, right? Well, with Yumi, we decided to go the opposite approach, which is if she wants something, she'll just walk in the room with a rocket launcher, blow everybody up, take what she wants, and then just walk out with what she wants. Like no subtlety at all. You know, we wanted it. If that's the spy thing, is like it's supposed to be subtle, but is like crazy attention grabbing.
sort of like if Elektra had a sense of self-control.
Yes, exactly, dude. That's where we were marching with all that stuff. So it's been a ton of fun. And Doug just wrote like an amazing script, an amazing story. So I couldn't have been happier working on it. Working with him was an absolute pleasure.
So how did you get into illustration? What was sort of your inspiration or launching point?
So when I was young, I always sort of like doodled in the margins of like my notebooks in school and stuff, but I never really took drawing seriously. I thought art was cool, but I never really like actually pursued it,
Mm-hmm.
and had no like technical training or anything like that. And then I went to college. I decided to get into like graphic design, just because like it seemed like something cool. And like at that time, I think I was thinking that I would eventually do like a comic book, and be satisfied with that. And my school ventures took me out to San Francisco, San Diego, where I lived there for a few months and was wrapping up my college stuff out there. But I saw that there was a convention coming through San Francisco at the time, and just randomly I had the time. I was living out in California. I didn't know anybody, so I'm in like, I'm living out of this guy's garage, like just sitting in the garage drawing all day because, I had nothing else to do.
Right.
And so I decided like, okay, this convention's coming up. I want to do comics eventually. Let me just see what happens if I like throw together a portfolio. So like I scoured the internet. I tried to figure out everything that I could, how that portfolio was supposed to be set up, or how I could actually just even try to get a job like that. And I put it together. Took me a couple of weeks, because at that time, like I was focused on wanting to like, I thought like, oh, I get a job for Marvel or DC or something. And
right.
With that setup, you have to produce like almost like a page a day to maintain your stuff. So I put together a portfolio where that was the case. Like that was the best stuff that I could produce like in a day for each page. And I went to WonderCon, and this is when it was in San Francisco before Anaheim. And I went out there, I started to get like some reviews. I met a guy by the name of Joshua Covey. He like, we're kind of like review buddies at that time. And he, my first ever portfolio review was from Erik Larsen, who just like spent a couple of hours with me, like really breaking everything down. And I was just like, at the end of it, I was like, wow, he like hates my stuff, but that's cool. Like I just learned a lot. And he literally turned to me and he goes like, hey man, can I cuss by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. He said, so he turns to me and he goes, hey man, at this point, you probably think I hate your shit, right? And I was just like, that's totally fine, man. No big deal. He's like, no, man. You're not half bad. Like, he's like, don't worry. You're not half bad. So just fix this stuff or whatever and come back. And then Kobe pointed me in the direction of Stelfreeze, and he was like, hey, you should get Brian to review your stuff. I think I think you'll learn a lot there. And I was like super nervous because Brian, as far as like being a comic book fan, was just like the epitome of everything for me as far as that stuff's concerned. Because like, and I'll say this straight up, when I was like 10 years old or around that age and the Shadow of the Bat stuff was coming out,
oh yeah,
I was like new to Batman at that point, right? Like it's like my first like earliest memories of reading comics and reading Batman, like 9-10 years old or whatever. And I assumed that the guy who did the cover was the guy who was working on the cover was the guy who like made the character. So when those Shadow of the Bat covers were coming out as a child, until obviously like a few years after that, I realized that wasn't the case. I thought Brian had invented Batman. You know, like I was like, oh man, this is the guy, like this is the thing. So
I think we all have some of that as kids, you know.
yeah,
It's a little
you don't
different
know.
now because with Wikipedia, with the internet,
Right. You
there
have the
are,
information available.
we
Yeah.
have all that information. We look it up, and if they don't, the movies have taken off to a degree that,
Right.
you know, you watch Entertainment Tonight or something, and they're going to tell you about Jack Kirby and Stan Lee did this.
Right.
At that time, there was no such thing.
Nothing like that. I could not Google anything, nor did we have a computer. So there was no way that was going to happen. And yeah, so, you know, that was really nerve wracking to like bring my portfolio to Brian. And when I did, you know, he sort of went through my stuff. You know, I knew I was missing a lot of like some fundamental things in my practice or my work to refine it to be better. He
Mhm.
really like tackled that stuff. He really like helped me a lot to point out that like I wasn't pursuing being an artist. What I was actually pursuing was being a storyteller, because in that portfolio I had my own story that I had made up, that I had done in like a, you know, Jim Lee / Ryan Otley style. And
Right.
I say that loosely. It's probably disrespectful to even bring their names up with that sample. But and then the other thing was like a Mignola, Tim Sale, like Batman story that I found a script for online, that I did drawings for that as well. And I think what Brian saw in that was that I wasn't after doing the art, like to say, hey, the art has to look like this. I was already subconsciously thinking like, hey, if it's this type of story, it should kind of have these things in there, because these things make it feel more like that type of story.
Right. You see a
So
lot of that with Batman in particular. The tone of the story. DC's gotten very good about matching the tone of the story to the artist.
right.
Like, and this goes back like what, 20 years, but they did that series Red Rain or whatever
Mm-hmm.
with I forget the artist's name, but and he's really well acclaimed artist, but his Batman has the really tall spiked, you
Oh
know,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah. Mm-hmm.
vampiric Batman, or you've
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
got Frank Miller's chunky Batman, you know,
Right.
and they do a good job of matching the tone of the story to the look of the story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
Whereas,
think that's what helps sell it, you know, because at
oh
the end of
yeah,
the day, it's like a comic book is not pieces of artwork. It is not writing. It is a story that's done with both of those things, you know. And then I really do coach a lot of people at, when conventions were a thing, hopefully when they come back,
right,
to basically let them know that, you know, because I think a lot of young people when starting out, they don't realize that that's the game that they're getting into. We're
mhm.
not actually like, I'm not in this to be the best artist I can be. Doug is not in it to be the best writer he can be. We're in it to be the best storytellers we can be, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, is we're telling stories.
The atmosphere of
So
the arc set is as much part of the tone of the story, you know, as the scripted.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
the cinema, you know, in the film term, cinematography. There, the word came.
Ding ding ding.
And that is a real thing. Like you see, you know, and it happens. You see artists that may get this very intense sort of story, but the art, it feels maudlin
Mm-hmm.
for it. Like there
Mm-hmm.
were periods, like say in 1980s Punisher, where it's almost more looks like a GI Joe sort of persona than a Rambo-esque, Death Wish-esque character.
Right.
And
Right.
that's one example. You go back and you read those, and you're like, I know that they had to meet the comics code, but it
Yeah.
still feels a
A
little
little hokey.
Chuck
Yeah.
Norrisy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, a little hokey on that. No, I'm with you. I'm totally with you.
yeah.
I think also that Stan Lee era comics early on as well. Although like obviously no disrespect to Stan or Jack, amazing. Thank you so much for laying the groundwork for everything that we do now. But like I think they were still figuring out how comics work too. So, you know, you have that instance that's like that now reads as hokey, but at the time obviously was like innovative, where you'll
Mhm.
have like a Stan Lee Spider-Man panel where it's like, oh, Spider-Man's being thrown through, you know, a wall of bricks. And I see that in the picture, but then also the narration says, and Spider-Man gets thrown through a wall of bricks. And then
Yeah,
Spider-Man's, you know, dialogue is, oh no, he threw me through a
I'm
wall of
getting.
bricks. You know, it's
Yeah,
like, it's a little
um,
redundant. You know?
I did a read a while back of I got the volume 1 omnibus of Incredible Hulk,
Mm,
and you know, like the first, I don't know how many years were Stan.
yeah.
I got that one, and I got the early Daredevil stuff, and he's amazingly wordy compared
Yes.
to what they do now.
Yeah.
Just incredibly wordy. But he had such, you know, talent helping him along the way with that too, because he's basically making stuff up as he goes. And I remember you read those early 3 or so years of the Hulk, and he doesn't even have any consistent idea of how Banner turns into the Hulk. At one point, at one point, and this has got to be like 3-4 years into the character, he goes, okay, so Banner gets adrenaline or mad or whatever, he turns into the Hulk. If the Hulk gets mad or gets adrenaline, he turns into Banner, and your brain just goes funk, and it stays like that a little bit for a little while before he goes, no, wait, that doesn't make any sense. When the Hulk calms down, he turns back into so it's almost like he's just figuring it out as he goes.
Right.
And there is a charm to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, he was like accompanied by Jack and John Buscema and like all of these amazing guys who were incredible storytellers in their own right. Like, I mean, it's just, and I think like that Marvel style of working where you go back and forth, where it's like, hey, this stuff happens, and then sort of the artist comes in and goes, okay, cool, that's what's happening, then this is how I'm going to show it, and then they come back and they go, okay, well, if that's how you're going to show it, then this is how I'm going to put the dialogue, kind of thing. And that back and forth, I think, really builds something unique and sort of pushes each person to try to like one up the other, but in the good way. It's not like in a negative way. It's sort of, for example, with Yumi, Doug would pass me the script and I would read it and I would be like, oh my God, this is awesome. I can't believe I'm about to do, let's say, this fight scene between Yumi and this femme fatale that wields a flaming cane, and I was just like, wow, that's going to be nuts, But then I sat there and I was like, okay, but what could make this crazier? Like, how can I bump this like to another notch, so that I'd send it to Doug and he's like, okay, now I'm going to do this kind of thing. And Doug has a written rule that's like, don't send it to him unless I think it's too much, right? Because he would rather pull it back than like have to go, no, you have to go further. Like you have to do more. Right. So I get this script, the scene, she's fighting a woman with a flaming cane. I'm like, how can I make that cooler? I was like, okay, cooler than one single flaming cane is 2 flaming canes. So let's have her bust that in half and start flame throwing the entire bridge kind of thing, And that back and forth and that growth, and then once Doug saw that, then he had another pass of the dialogue. And so he was able to tighten that stuff up. If he saw I handled something with an expression or with a certain way I shot a panel or showed something, he knew that he didn't have the character say that or narrate that. He could just go with something else. So it just made our starter a lot tighter going back and forth like that.
That's one of those amazing things that, and if I get the name pronounced wrong, forgive me, Gene Colan. I read a bunch of his run on Daredevil, and he had this way of like, and you'd have one character in position different ways as their movements.
Yeah.
But doing that made it feel like sequentially not a mess to read.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Well, that technique, to be honest, is something that I usually avoid because like it's so hard to get right and make it look proper, because like I think it's a great way to show, like, I think more times than not, people will do that technique and it ends up being slow motion, not somebody moving really fast, So it's like when I see somebody like Gene that can like pull that off and make it look like that character's not only moving in sequence, but that they're moving quickly through the entire like sequence. I think that's like phenomenal, and I quite haven't figured out how to do that with my stuff yet. So I separate panels, it's one character, one panel, another character. Like
it was amazing, all in one panel.
Yeah, like, it's incredible.
Action. It's like, how?
Yeah. No, I agree, man. It's awesome. When I see people do that thing, I'm definitely envious, But I think there's also like a story moment for that, and I think like in the instance you're speaking of, he used that properly for the moment. It's like the story is king, like in our realm, story is king. It dictates what it is that we should be doing to get to that point, So
like, I think one of the big ones that actually doesn't get talked about a lot now is, if you remember the big death of Superman. They did.
Yeah.
And the further you got into the book, the less panels there were per page. So by the time you got to the last few pages of it, it was just literally one panel with like almost no words, if any words at all.
Right. Usually showing the S or something like that, right?
And it was no one wants to see Superman die, but the way that presentation made it a hammer. They understood what they were doing by doing that. and that's just me going off on something.
No, dude, but that's legit.
Yeah.
Like that's storytelling
Yeah.
pure, you know, like that's something. And that's another thing that I talk to about people coming up as well, is that the storytelling doesn't just happen in the art. Storytelling is happening in the lettering. The storytelling is happening in the coloring. The storytelling is happening in your panel choices, you know, like
Yeah.
how you dictate the framing of each panel is actually the very basic base layer of storytelling you're doing, you know. I like to relate that to sort of music whenever I think about that stuff. And I know that probably sounds weird, but I look at like panels as like the drum line, the beat, you know, like
Rhythm
that's,
section,
yeah, the rhythm section. Exactly. Like I'm just looking at, when I'm paneling something, I read a page, and this is what I'll do is I'll actually read the script of something, and I will read it a few times. And on like the third time that I'm reading the script, I'll go through and I will, just as I'm reading on a little piece of paper next to the script, I'll just put little, you know, rectangles to simplify pages, and then just do quick panel cuts of what I feel is the right paneling for that situation, just off feeling, to get my base beats down. And
Yeah.
then I'll essentially go over that. And, you know, segmenting my process like that allows me to keep pushing stuff, and it makes it easier for me, because then I'm not deciding what the panel size is, deciding what goes in the panel, deciding what color something is, deciding what, you know, position, layout, all that stuff at the same time. You know, I'm like, okay, panels, boom. And then I've got that. Now when I look at that, I'm like, okay, this is the beat. This is the
Yeah.
space I have to do that beat in. What what does this space call for based on
Yeah.
like the script? So,
That I enjoy that analogy. You know, the musical act that comes to mind when you put it that way is AC/DC, because
yeah.
their style doesn't change. They
Mm-hmm.
understand what they're doing on all levels of the band, that they've actually they set that palette up and play that exact palette,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just sort of a similar construction. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and taking it further for the music thing, man. Like honestly, and at the risk of sounding a little crazy here, I then start thinking of like, you know, sort of different other parts. Once I start doing the layouts, that's sort of my melodies. When I start
Yeah.
doing, you know, the actual expression, I think of that almost as like, you know, sort of anything else, piano or any other things that I want to lay in there. And then to me, the words are the lyrics. So, you know, it's all like this like weird thing, but that helps me with my pacing. When I think about that, it allows me to sort of feel good about how I'm setting things up and how I'm like going from one panel to another, because it helps me keep things like in line. You know, it helps me think of things as all like one sequential thing happening, versus like, hey, here's a picture of this, and now you're in an art gallery, so here's another picture of this, and let's walk over here, and there's another awesome picture of this. You know, I want them all to connect. So anything I can do to trick my brain for that,
I had an
I'm all for
amusing moment there where I heard in my head Robert Plant um,
it.
singing Stan Lee's dialogue to the early Thor books.
Ah.
Art. Well, they came close to that several
Yeah,
times.
yeah, true.
Who were a couple of artists particularly that were inspiring to you?
On the come up, I'd say early on when I wanted to do the comic thing was a lot of like at the time more recent guys, guys like I said earlier, Otley and Mignola. I mean, these guys also have been doing it for a while too, so it's like not super new. But like, you know, Mignola, definitely Stelfreeze, a guy by the name of Rob Haynes, who, Rob Haynes, and I was a member of Gaijin Studios, and then also Corey Walker and Sean Galloway. You know, lots of like, and different guys too. You know, like just all over the place. I mean, you know, Brian's stuff looks nothing like Mignola stuff. Looks nothing like, you know, Sean Galloway stuff. Looks nothing like. I think all that diversity, you know, also spoke to me as like, oh, okay, cool. I like stories like this when they're done this way, and I like stories like this when they're done this way, and all of that opened it up a lot for me.
It's kind of amazing to think about. You mentioned Mignola. I have a number of issues from the 80s of the Hulk that he did. And
Wow.
you came up with Kirby, and you came up with Marie Severin and some of these people. And you sort of have a mental image of this character. He's sort of, just giant green guy. And you get to Mignola and suddenly he's scary.
Yeah.
Looks
He's an
scary.
actual monster. Yeah, he's an actual
Yeah.
monster. Right. No, I know that dude. And I, yeah, dude, Mignola really, as far as his simplification, I think one of the things that I enjoy so much about that is what he doesn't draw. To me, that's like so fascinating, that's like, because that's what it is. I think comics is like more about what you don't draw than it is about what you draw. It's one of the only mediums that you ask the reader to participate, because, if you were to consider sort of film, if you go watch a movie, they give you everything. They give you the sound, they give you the timing, they give you the cuts, they give you the acting, the expression, the emotion. Like, they give you everything on screen. There really isn't much to be. Films have things to be inferred, but there isn't much to be inferred as far as like what's presented. Right. With novels, it's like the opposite end of the thing, where they don't really show you everything, but they still give you everything, because they can give you everything in interior thought. They can go deep into the psyche and the brain, the inner dialogue of a character. Comics inhabits this like weird space between both, where you get some elements of each, but you don't get all the elements of either. But in that way, comics, to fill that gap, asks the reader to participate. Like we ask the reader, like, hey, come tell this story with us. I can't show you everything, but what I'm gonna do is I'm going to throw you up in the air and I'm gonna catch you over here. What happens in between there is completely up to your brain, and more than likely will be much cooler than anything I can draw. So, like I like that aspect of it, and Mignola does that so well. It's like you feel like you're telling the story with him, as you're reading it, because you're like involved in it. And I think that's like the magic place that I would like to hopefully one day reach with my stuff, to really be able to communicate well like that, simply, and directly. I think that's just so incredible. It's something very unique to comics that I don't think any other medium has,
that is
might ever have. So
I remember, I think it was around the time that the Daredevil movie came out. It had a cameo in it by Kevin Smith. Mm-hmm. And if I remember right, they were actually, someone wanted him to do it was before Marvel Studios was a thing, and everything was licensed out to Fox or whoever. And somebody approached him about doing a superhero movie, and he said that he didn't want to do it because he couldn't figure out a way, the internal dialogue of the characters, the thought bubbles, that there was no way to do that in a film. So if he couldn't do that in a film, he wasn't really
didn't want to do it.
And that's just something I heard. I don't
it makes sense though.
Actually true, but that was actually food for thought, because 80% of a Spider-Man fight is him making pithy comments in his head.
Very true. It's very true, man.
And that was something I noticed with the Raimi films. The second one pulled it off. They had a little of the bitter sarcasm. In that first one, after the Maguires, Spider-Man with the lizard, they got that kind of too.
I think when they did the Amazing Spider-Man, as far as the quipping back and forth, chef's kiss, man. They really did a good job with Andrew Garfield. He, like, that part of it, like, I really did feel that was Spider-Man, like more so than like any other guy's gotten it yet. I feel like he got that part really well,
that was something that got me. And I've actually had this debate where people are, no, I like Maguire. Maguire was the perfect Parker. And I'm like, yeah, but, and it might have been when I was growing up. Because I grew up with the Spider-Man versus the Juggernaut and the Madam Web and that kind of stuff. But as I knew him, he was a little bitter and sarcastic.
Right.
He was tired of people stepping on him all the time. And in the Garfield, he had a skateboard. And he, to me, was a bigger representation of that Parker, whereas Maguire is literally this doe-eyed innocent.
Right. Right. Well, dude, I mean, like, dude, to me, like, Andrew Garfield looks like a Steve Ditko drawing, when I saw him as the casting, I was like, dude, they did they like make a clone from those comics to make this kid to look like Spider-Man,
They had a scene in that first one. I didn't see the second one, but they had a scene in the first one where he does the shoot a web down all the tunnels, and he sets up a central location, and he does that McFarlane spider crouch on it. And I was like, goosebumps. I'm so there.
I know, dude. And I had heard a lot of people like riff on that Spider-Man movie, but I actually do like that one, the Amazing Spider-Man. I really did enjoy that one. Like I the Maguire ones, 2 gets a pass, you know,
Yeah.
like two almost only for that Doc Ock Spider-Man fight up a building, because my goodness, I had been waiting to see that my entire life, you know.
And that still looks amazing to this day.
Still looks amazing.
It's like 15 years old now.
Right. Like I was in the theater, like just going crazy when I saw it. I was like, oh my God, they're fighting up. You know, it's like,
and Ox sells that movie.
Yeah.
Almost more than Spider-Man does, because the first one was kind of like a Power Rangers movie.
Yeah. I'll back you up on that for sure.
Yeah. And we don't discuss the third.
No, that what one?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
The bad thing about that one was Venom is the natural third movie enemy, because Mary Jane has accepted you, and she said, no matter what the secret identity is, I'll be with you. So Venom is the guy who knows.
Right.
So you do that fight, and then you have the wedding, and you end your trilogy nice, but we couldn't do that.
Yeah, I know. And you know what? Like, what bothers me so much too about that third one, honestly, is the Sandman aspect of that movie is so good.
Yeah.
You know, like the Sandman side and story and like the whole thing that's going on with that is actually good.
Yeah, it is.
The other stuff, the Goblin and Venom coming into it feels so shoehorned, you know, that like it doesn't work for me for whatever reason. You know, I don't know what they had to go through when they were producing it or whatever, and I had thought that I had heard way back, and I might be remembering this wrong, but I thought I had heard somewhere where Raimi had said that he really didn't ever want to do Venom, you know, like that he wanted to stay away from that character, but you know,
he wanted to do the characters he grew up with. So you note that the Sandman is just really well developed.
Yeah.
The studio shoehorned Venom. But and the weird thing with the Osborn kid, all of a sudden
the Xbox Goblin, it's rough.
There's a magic butler we haven't seen in either 2 previous movies, who after he nearly kills himself and half the city, oh, by the way, he didn't kill your dad. Okay, well that just clears.
Right, exactly. So then why are you doing this, by the way?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they wanted to continue or whatever, and that's what they were trying to do, is more so leave it open than like actually finish something, without realizing that what people were there was for the finish.
Yeah.
I think everybody showed up for the end, like they wanted the end, and the fact that they left it so open left a lot of us hurt, you know, because we were like, man, because there wasn't a thing like that before Spider-Man that had a trilogy of superhero movies that were like blockbuster hits, like one after the other, you know, like, I mean, Batman, yes, before that and all that, but that had all gone away, and sort of the X-Men franchise like started that with Fox. Like they at least got comic book movies in the door again to be actually semi-serious. But then when Sony did the Spider-Man stuff, it really like took off, I think, you know, for Marvel and everything. So yeah, I think they wanted to leave it open, but they didn't realize that like audiences at that point were like, yo, 3 movies, we're good, bring it in, you know, bring it in, let's do it. So
no one who's ever followed that character ever wants to think of him as a girlfriend beater. No,
right? No,
you're asking an awful lot of your audience then.
No, you've gone far there. Yeah, I agree. That's what I said. That the non-Sandman stuff of that movie is no good. The Sandman stuff is great. If I could supercut just the Sandman stuff with some kind of extra ending on there, I'd actually enjoy the film.
And as long as that movie was, you'd probably have a good hour and a half.
True. It's very true. It's very true, actually. You mentioned it.
So what do you got lined up for the future?
I currently work on a webcomic that we post on Webtoon Canvas with Trey Walker. It's called Mongrel. It's about a young girl who accidentally adopts a demon dog and gets magical girl powers from this demon dog. So it's this like wild, crazy, you know, just we're having fun with it. There's a lot of nods to a lot of our manga influences. You know, I admittedly like Sailor Moon, so I thought like, hey, it would be awesome to do a magical girl thing. Trey Walker, who wrote Last Stop, which is the book that I did with him previously, that's out by Scout and people can pick that up. We decided to just go wild with it, you know, do something completely different. And that was a lot, that's been a lot of fun, and it'll continue to be. And you know, because we've got big plans for that, and we'll be continuing with that. And that's free. So anybody who goes to, you can follow me on social media, you'll find links on there. But if you just go to Webtoon and you search Mongrel,
Mm-hmm.
or you search Still Cinema, STILLCINEMA, that is Trey Walker and I sort of like group name. So we that's where we put out our webtoons through. And we got a
It's
few
like
on there.
a hellhound type dog, breathes fire, looks
Yeah.
like a Rottweiler gone nuts sort of deal.
Oh, dude, he looks like my dog who actually passed in December, sadly, but is a Boston Terrier. So is what we based him off of. He's like a little tiny like guy, and the fun part is that like when they connect, they give each other, they like boost each other's demon powers basically. And so he turns into a bigger like bulldog Labrador sort of style dog, you know, whatever, and she turns into like a giant monster girl. So it's like it's been a lot of fun, man. You know, we wanted to flip that on its head too, the whole magical girl thing. So it's like essentially like Spawn meets Spawn meets Sailor Moon is what we're going for. So
Sailor Moon meets
yeah. Yes, exactly, dude. And it's been a lot of fun. And Trey's writing a hell of a story with that too. You know, I have to say that I am like truly lucky to have the amazing partners and creators that I've had throughout my career and moving forward. You know, like I'm super glad that I've had these good people around, you know, because not only is Trey a good person, but he's a great writer, and so is Doug, you know, Doug Wagner. So that's what I've got going concurrently. And then Trey and I are actually setting up another series that we'll be announcing shortly, and plenty more to go. So I've got a lot in the tank.
Sounds good. Keeping busy is good.
Absolutely.
Well, Hoyt, thank you much for stopping by today. It's been a lot of fun.
Dude, my pleasure, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me, man. Absolutely. Seriously. Yeah.
And everybody, we're going to drop a link in this, but don't forget to head over to Kickstarter and kickstart Yumi. How many days you got left on that?
We have till the 11th. So, and I should know this off the top of my head, but that is 11 days from right now. 11 days? I'm silly.
Today, I think
11 days. Yep.
Yeah, today I think is 28th.
Yeah, 28th. Jeez, time flies, man. This month has felt so short, but so long as we've been running this campaign. It's hard to keep track of time. So
it's really so weird. Yeah. Yep, we're going to drop a link in there so you guys go and kickstart that. And
thank y'all so much for the support. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
I'm going to go read Mongrel because it sounds awesome.
Let's go.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Cool. My pleasure.